Senator Miville-Dechêne, thank you. I would like to speak at second reading on Bill C-16, an act that seeks to protect victims. I feel like saying it's about time. Whether it is criminalizing sexual deepfakes or creating offenses to better protect children from a range of harms, the government is playing catch-up on issues on which Europe and Australia have already legislated. I'm relieved by the fact that the federal government is finally tackling the issue of coercive control, which unfortunately all too often leads to femicide. I would like to pay tribute here to two former NDP MPs, Laura Collins and Randall Garrison, who were first to introduce private members' bills in the House of Commons on the subject of coercive control. I myself sponsored Bill C-332 in the Senate in 2024, but unfortunately it died on the order paper when Parliament was prorogued. It wasn't yesterday that women's support groups have recently realized that there's a range of controlling behaviors distinct from physical violence or even, in worst cases, femicide. In Quebec, the Regroupement des Maisons pour Victimes de Violences Conjugales, a group to help women victims of domestic violence, has worked extensively over the past 5 years on coercive control, training more than 6,200 professionals in the police and judicial system. Because even without legislation, awareness raising about coercive control can help professionals identifying women in distress. Let us not forget, moreover, that the number of charges related to breaches of bail conditions by those accused of domestic violence has almost tripled in the last 8 years in Quebec alone. That means that the alleged victims, women, are not safe. Given this context, I'm surprised that the Minister of Justice has not taken into account the amendment proposed by the Federal Ombudsman for Victims of Crime. The Ombudsman suggested that the prosecution takes all reasonable steps to inform victims when their alleged assailant is released. It seems to me that this is essential in a bill that seeks to better protect victims. Quebec has found an original way of keeping victims informed, thanks to the diligence of crime victim support centers, but this is not the case around the country. A few aspects concern me in C-16. Rather than retaining the term coercive control, which accurately defines the reality of C-332, the government has chosen to rename this offense as controlling or coercive conduct. It is the addition of the term "or" that worries me, as it means that controlling but non-coercive behaviors towards an intimate partner would be sufficient grounds for a charge. However, experts and women's groups mentioned during the House of Commons review that men often accuse of their partners of wanting to control everything, particularly the children's schedules, activities, and running of the household. Yet this type of control, which can occur in a dysfunctional relationship or when the mother has custody of children, is not the same as coercive control. I also note that, as many others, the term femicide is not defined in the main body of the bill, whereas in the summary of C-16, it states that the criminal code is being amended to equate murder, classified as femicide when the victim is a woman, with first-degree murder. Unfortunately, what is written in summary does not have force of law. In Section 25, the term femicide is used without being defined. Are we to understand that a man can be a victim of a femicide, which makes no sense? Why not define the term? Because femicide is when a woman is killed simply because she is a woman, as in the Polytechnique tragedy in Montreal. Furthermore, sexual deepfakes are just as much of a scourge for women as they are for minors. According to an American study, 1 in 2 young people has already used a website or app that allows people to be made to appear naked. The La Presse newspaper La Presse recently reported that a victim in Quebec, known as Sarah, has been suffering from anxiety since a deepfake image of her naked at the age of 13 was circulated at her school. The EU has already committed to banning tools used to create sexual deepfakes. Another unresolved issue in C-16 is the rapid removal of intimate images from the internet. A court order is required. By comparison, Quebec is a pioneer in civil law, having established an accessible online procedure to urgently remove intimate images for anyone over the age of 14. Let us return to coercive control. Some groups are concerned that this new offense could backfire on women trying to protect their children from domestic violence. Others believe that the concept of coercive control is too broad and risks being challenged or misinterpreted. These criticisms are legitimate. Discussions will need to take place with the communities most concerned before C-16 comes into force. A 2-year transition period is provided for C-16, which is reasonable. I would add that there are ways to minimize the risk of errors. Firstly, everyone agrees that the key to success lies in raising public awareness and training professionals who come into contact with victims to effectively identify coercive control. For example, this will require more time for police officers and the development of new, longer, and more detailed questionnaires for filing those complaints. According to Karine Barrett, project manager at the Network for Women's Shelters for Victims of Violence, the experience in Scotland shows that when the dynamics and patterns of coercive control are well understood, prosecutors and police find it easier to prove coercive control than isolated victims of physical violence. When we fully understand what coercive control is, we are better able to determine who is the primary perpetrator, particularly when there are cross-complaints from both partners. In Britain, at least, it seems that the offense of coercive control has so far not backfired on the victim. In conclusion, according to Professor Carmen Gale, a leading expert in the field, the criminalization of coercive control is essential. Professor Gale said, "It is important to strengthen women's safety. The offense of coercive control would be a clear recognition that intimate partner violence is a pattern of control and power over the victim and would validate the experiences of victims. Such an offense could also prevent intimate partner homicides." What we no longer want is for victims of coercive control not to seek help because they feel that what they are going through is not serious enough or not a criminal offense. We must also ensure that these women are not dismissed when they file complaints simply because they have no bruises. In closing, I wish to pay tribute to the courage of the survivors of these heinous crimes. We heard from them at committee. I'm thinking today, for example, of Myriam Bergeron. It is high time we came to their aid by strengthening our laws.